Here it is, my 25 book CGC Prescreen is back. Hey there, today I have a CGC unboxing, and this is a 25 book 9.8 Prescreen. I did record about this where I was going through maybe 35 to 40 different comics, and I had kind of asked for maybe some assistance with comments on the video in terms of what books I should send in and which books I shouldn't. And then I just got lazy, and I had kind of narrowed things down to about 25 books. I was kind of waiting for a few other books to be delivered and was hoping that they would be 9.8 candidates that I could include. And then I was watching other unboxing videos, and everyone was commenting about how the turnaround time was really picking up at CGC. And just as I said before, comic books are kind of a mood, and I was in the mood to send in a pretty nice, significant 25 book CGC submission. Mostly modern books, a few slipped in that were a little bit older. But I think the consensus of the video that I created, where I was asking for opinions, like what makes a good 25 book pre-screen submission? It's designed by CGC to really handle modern books. And I think the thought process is that in most cases, people that are submitting comic books to CGC in a pre-screen, that those books are modern, and also that moderns being submitted to CGC typically aren't sort of riddled with defects and wear and tear like older books are. So the thought is, that they could potentially be able to grade these quickly and turn them around faster, which really hadn't been the case up until recently. And if you think about it, like if you're submitting 25 comic books at once and to have it completely go through the pre-screen process, the grading process, and then obviously the slabbing and the quality control, the door-to-door shipping and all of that, to get things back within a month to 2 months is, I think, very reasonable. And especially compared to what it was maybe a year ago when things were really backed up there, I wasn't even seeing my orders being received in a timely fashion. So what's happening now in my experience, and I have a few orders in with CGC, is it still takes, I don't know, I would say maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks for my submission to be acknowledged. And I don't fast track anything. I know a lot of folks say I really should start using fast track, but I'm in no hurry to get these books back. The only thing that makes me anxious is just that my comics are gone and I want them to come home. But I really don't need to accelerate it any faster. I'm like, the books are there, I know they'll be received, and then once they're received into the CGC system, what I have found is certainly the time it takes to go from received to schedule for grading to encapsulation and then back to me. I mean, once it's received, that process goes pretty fast. So a lot of the waiting time that I've been experiencing is still waiting for the books to be acknowledged by CGC. So that's the nerve-wracking part for me. I feel like I'm spending more time waiting from the time that I actually drop off my order for shipping out to the time that it's acknowledged as received by CGC. That to me is my moment, like, okay, where are my books? Once they're in the system, it's a pretty quick turnaround. Speaking of quick turnarounds, I want to get to the unboxing. I want to open these up. So I won't do an overly fake or dramatic grade reveal. I won't try and cover the slab and put all kinds of things on the front of it. It's either a 9.8 or it's not if it's in the case. Now, hopefully, if you watched my previous video where I went through the comics that I was considering submitting, and those books in that video are in this submission. So it'll be kind of nice to compare maybe my thoughts back then where I had some books that I think were borderline, and hopefully they got through as a 9.8. So let's get this thing opened up. All right, it's open, and I am really excited here because this is the package of rejects, and it's very small. It does mean that I did not have a perfect submission, but it looks like the vast majority of the books were graded in a 9.8. All right, and on to the books that I got graded. All right, first one here. This is Department of Truth number 3. This is just the variant cover B. It's open order. For me, it was just not so much about the value, just my love of the series, my love for this cover, and the fact that it's essentially an all-black cover. The woman in red is basically just engulfed by total darkness here, and I just find this like super creepy. It's not a very valuable book. I just love the cover, but also kind of just loved the challenge of it being a book that I think over time will really be tough in high grade. So I wanted to go ahead and get that slabbed, and I just looked at it raw and was like, wow, here's a completely black cover that looked to be completely defect free. So wanted to do that. And I'm just taking a look at the slab itself. Sometimes what I've noticed is if one case has a scratch or some defect, then they all kind of do. The case looks to be in really, really good shape here, so I'm happy about that. Okay, next one, we've got another Department of Truth. This is Department of Truth number 1. It is technically variant cover K, and this is a Sanctum Sanctorum Comics exclusive, where they just took the Jenny Frison cover and made a full art version in black and white. And I remember when I started reading this series and was just kind of blown away by it and just got so immersed in the story that once I was getting up to issue 3 and 4 and 5, I just went back and tried to find as many copies of issue 1 that I could. And so if I remember right, something that I got from them when they were having maybe a steep discount on back issues and things like that. So just fantastic cover. I'd love to kind of line up my Department of Truth collection of graded number 1s, as I really, really love this cover by Jenny Frison. All right, like with most CGC submissions that I send in, I try to include at least one book from Something is Killing the Children, and this is issue number 3 from November 2019. Again, all of these books got a 9.8 white pages. This is just the standard cover A for issue number 3, and my goal is to have every cover A issue, at least 1 through 10. We'll kind of see after that if it makes good financial sense. I may be able just to buy them already slabbed, but at least 1 through 10, getting them in the case here. And I was opening these in order, and I did send in issue 2, so I don't know if issue 2 made it here. I think that I'm down to issue 2, and I would say, and then 7 and 9, something like that to go, and I have everything else in a 9.8 white pages. So very, very happy to add issue 3 to that run. Next, we've got Department of Truth number 2. This is the Francisco Francavilla variant. This is a 1 in 10 of issue number 2. I love Francavilla's art. I thought this was a really cool, creepy cover as well. Loved the series for all the same reasons I stated before. But I was all in, pretty hardcore with buying a lot of these ratio covers and trying to get them as soon as they came out. And had a few copies of his 1 in 10. And picked the best one and sent it in, and happy to get that one back in a 9.8. All right, next up, I have been collecting the Sozomaika 1 in 25 variants for Catwoman. And this is Catwoman number 40. And she had a really, really amazing and memorable run of incentives. They kind of took the market by storm. I think that kind of modeled off of the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman from the original Batman Returns. And her style is really cool. It almost has like a metallic or painted or there's some sort of element to her style that's just very recognizable. And I had been collecting her 1 in 25s. And I'll be honest, I was really on the fence with a lot of these. They're cardstock. They have just like a little tiny bit of spine splitting, a little tiny bit of corner whitening with the cardstock just starting to kind of naturally come apart. And what's, I think, good for me to learn is that's acceptable. That's okay. I think CGC allows for the cardstocks to not necessarily start splitting apart, but it's just sort of the nature of that type of paper. So really, really happy. And I sent more Sozomaika variants in this order, and I'm hoping that they are in here. But we'll have to wait and see because it looks like they're in kind of a random order. So we're going to move on to Marvel Comics, and this is Dr. Aphra number 18. This is from 2018. And I love this cover with Aphra and Hera. And we know we're going to get Hera in live action. We've seen a glimpse of her in a preview for Ahsoka that's coming to Disney Plus, I believe, next year. So we're going to see the Rebels characters in live action. This cover is by Ashley Witter, who did an amazing run of covers on Dr. Aphra. And this was one of those that when I just saw the cover, I loved it. I thought it was gorgeous. And this has become a little bit collectible just for the fact that it has Hera on the cover. As these Rebels characters, as popular as they already are, move into live action, I think there's going to be more attention on books like this. And I'm hoping Aphra makes it in there someday soon. So when we see Aphra and the Rebels characters on screen, maybe even together, I think people will go back and take a look at this book as one of the more recognizable Aphra and Rebels related covers. All right, next one. Oh, this is very cool. Star Wars The Mandalorian #1. This is the action figure variant. These are great. I fool everybody with these where I tell them I got a graded action figure and they're like, wait, you're into toys now? And then they go and try and grab the plastic and it still fools them, even though these action figure variants have been around for several years now. When I pre-ordered Mandalorian #1, I got every standard variant, so no store exclusives, but it was every cover price variant plus all of the incentives. And I was a little bummed and disappointed as I was going through them because it didn't look like many of them really were 9.8 candidates, but I knew this one was. And so this was the one that I chose to send in out of that bunch. And at least I hit the 9.8 with this one. I would have loved if the others were also 9.8 candidates, but I'll take this one. This one I noticed has quite a few Newton rings on the front, right on Mando's face. It's always like in a crotch or some other prominent part of the art. This is right in here. It's going to be hard to see on camera, but right here in his visor and part of the face, the vertical part of his face mask, bunch of Newton rings there. So that's unfortunate. I know that CGC says it's sometimes a normal part of the process and you kind of have to live with it. But again, the case looks pretty good. So all the cases are looking okay. My last submission that had a bunch of residue around, the residue's not there. It does have a bit of an outline, but I think that's typical and normal of a CGC slab. So that's the other good news. The slab's in really, really good condition and good shape as well. So really love this Mando action figure variant. Can't wait for season 3. And again, in all kinds of randomness in terms of order, here's Batman 118. I sent this in because I am a collector of the Spider-Man 1 homage pose. Again, this one has a lot of Newton rings on it, so that kind of affects the presentation a bit. But this was just an open order cardstock variant. I find it very strange that DC will homage Marvel covers sometimes. Like, I'm okay with it if everybody else does, but it's just weird to me that DC does it. I don't know of a lot of Marvel covers that homage DC, but it seems like DC's doing this more regularly. This will definitely go in that Spider-Man 1 homage lineup. And there is a full art version of this one, but since there's not a full art version of the original, I like it with the trade, and typically if it's homaged the way that I like it, it has sort of the throwback logo and title design, all new collector's item issue, question mark. Like, I love those little details that they put on it, so I wasn't really interested in the full art, and this was very affordable cover price version. So to me, these are very, very affordable, cheap, fun investments, and they really do look great all together. All right, continuing on and jumping back to Catwoman. This is Catwoman 42, another 1 in 25 Sozomaika variant. You could argue this is the Spider-Man homage or Spider-Man 1 pose, maybe in reverse. Hadn't really thought about that. But like I was saying, it has this sort of glossy, metallic look to it or something. Her style, it's so specific, and it really does kind of jump off the page in almost like a 3D style, but it's also painted. Her style is hard to describe because it's like shiny or painted in a way. It's very, like I said, very unique, very recognizable. And I think that as her audience continues to grow, I believe that these original 1 in 25 incentives, although they're down right now as most comics are, I think that over time, her run on these books, I think they're going to hold up. Okay, kind of a random book on my part. This is Batman Annual 25 from 2006. It was kind of a book I came across. I was looking for some of my Batman Hush Jim Lee back issues that I had originally collected, and when I was going through one of my cardboard short boxes, I found this Batman Annual, and I realized this is a great, it's an homage cover to Jim Aparo, but it's done by Jock, who's done a ton of just amazing and fantastic Batman covers specifically, but across many comics and many publishers. But again, thinking about that Department of Truth #3 and along the same lines, just the darker elements of this specific book really makes it tough in high grade. And the back as well, a really super dark ad. And as I took this out and realized, oh, this is a Jock cover and a Death in the Family trade paperback homage cover, I was like, this is pretty neat. And also, as I examined it, I couldn't see anything wrong with it. So I put it in a pile of 9.8 candidates. And I think when I was finalizing my submission, to me, this was like a sure thing. Like I just knew this one was a 9.8. Again, it was almost like the challenge of sending a book with this dark a cover in to see if I could get a 9.8. Okay, it's like every other book in here is Catwoman. This was the one that out of all of them, I was really hoping that got the 9.8, and I was nervous about this one because it did have one of those corners that I was talking about. This is Catwoman 43. This is kind of that Polaroid slanted cover here with Harley Quinn. And I remember I couldn't pre-order this one. I had to just buy it after it came out. And when I got it, I noticed there was a little bit of whitening down here in the corner. I had graded it myself as a 9.6. And then as I was going through the submission and thinking, well, I'm going to send some of the other Catwoman 1 in 25s in. And if I'm going to do a pre-screen, the worst thing that can happen is it's kicked out of the submission, and then I just know for sure that it's a 9.6. But I knew it had a chance, and if there's a chance, I wanted to go ahead and submit it. So this is probably my favorite 1 in 25 that Sosa Micah did for Catwoman. So that's awesome. Love that. Very happy to have that one. All right, I hope you're hanging in there about halfway through, a little more than halfway through. The next one is Star Wars High Republic #1, and this is the cover A. So this is the only cover A, and as I sit here in a Star Wars t-shirt and everything, I don't know why, but I didn't go heavy on High Republic at first. So when I placed my pre-order, I was like, I'll just take one copy of cover A. I believe there were a couple of other variants that were just straight open order, and I just got one of each. My favorite of #1 is the Stephanie Hans version with Yoda on the cover, and it's kind of like green and gold themed. I really love that one. You can't go wrong with Phil Noto either. How fortunate to get Noto's art on a lot of these books. And I'm a big believer that The Acolyte, the show that's being developed for Disney Plus, is Keeve Trennis. She is going to be the character. I believe that we are going to be set up for High Republic in live action. I can't wait for it, and I read the first series of High Republic. We're on to, I don't know if it's season 2 or volume 2 or whatever you want to call it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved Keeve Trennis as a character. I really enjoyed it. And what typically happens, kind of like with Department of Truth, as I was talking about earlier, is I'll kind of fall in love with the story, and then I retroactively scramble and try and pick up a bunch of the loose comics as much as I can. And there was a comment on my last video around how a lot of the videos I make, the comment was around, this is what's wrong with comic book collecting, because I'm not talking about what's inside the book. And that's because I read digitally, and I can't read every comic, so I read this series. I loved it. I'm not giving you a book report on High Republic. I think there's a lot of that information out there if you want the story spoiled. But that's typically what I will do, is I will collect, maybe lightly, I'll read and then get excited about a story, and I'll then probably go overboard and collect too much. Or I'll just realize, you know, maybe I'm just collecting for the art because the story's not that good and I'm not that interested in that particular character or storyline at the time. I think everybody collects comics the way they want to. So if you don't like me reading digitally and you don't like me collecting or grading, that's fine. I think we're all entitled to kind of collect and enjoy the hobby the way we want to. And I'm very happy to have several Star Wars books in this submission, and this one is Darth Maul #1 from 2017. This is just, this is a Rod Rice cover. I love it. This is like a full-on painted cover. You've got the full red background, just a menacing look on the face of Darth Maul there. So this is super cool. This one I wanted for really display purposes. There's no spec in this book. There's no first appearance. This Cad Bane doesn't show up for the first time in here or some other live-action Star Wars character. I just thought the art on this cover, it was one of the best Darth Maul covers I think I'd ever seen when I got it. And I remember I think I got this in a lot of books, a lot of Star Wars Darth Maul, maybe off of eBay or something. And was just very, very pleasantly surprised to see in what great condition it was. So I'd always had this one set aside. Like if I did another submission, I'll include this. And kind of at the last minute, I think I did a swap and I got this into the pre-screen, and I'm glad I did. Just gorgeous. All right, just like Something is Killing the Children, there's always a Captain Carter in these submissions, and this is Captain Carter #1. This is the David Nakayama full art variant. You could have picked up this variant from 616 Comics or Big Time Collectibles. I ordered mine from 616. I ordered 2 sets of the full art and trade. And this was one of those that, again, I swapped out at the last minute based on some feedback from that first video where folks had said, don't include some of the, there was some other Department of Truth exclusives that I ended up taking out and replacing with a few books, and this is one of them. And what I love about this particular full art is you get the full Union Jack all over the cover behind Peggy there, and the CGC label kind of acts as the trade. So this is just beautiful. I think it's well centered. Sometimes when you get the full art version, the character kind of starts in the middle or kind of, you know, somewhere maybe even 3/4 down, but she's super tall, very, very well centered, almost designed perfectly for a full art variant. And this was one I was like, I have to send this in. It's just too nice of a cover by David Nakayama. So this one's really awesome. All right, back to DC. This is Batman 98. This is the Jorge Jimenez 1 in 25. I was collecting these 1 in 25 incentives that Jimenez started doing for Batman, where everything in the James Tynion run seemed to introduce a new character, or we were starting to bring in the most popular of Batman characters, villains, and so forth. And with every issue, there was a different color background and a different character that was highlighted. And I collected those raw, and I've very slowly been submitting them to CGC. This is not a valuable book either anymore. In fact, could probably run the numbers and make the argument that it would have been better just to buy this already slabbed at a 9.8. But I had it and figured, why not send it in? And to me, it looked flawless, so I'm glad it got the 9.8. But probably for the money, this is a book that you can get already slabbed in a 9.8 if you wanted a copy. But those Jimenez 1 in 25s, the art is fantastic. I just think the print run is so high that it's not really that rare. So you can either find the incentive at a discount or already buy it slabbed. But again, if you think about like a full run of these with the full color background in each one being different, you'll get kind of a rainbow effect of these great Batman characters. And it runs all the way through issue 100. And it's just great. Ties into the Punchline storyline and that early Batman run that Tynion did for 30 or so issues. All right, next up, this is also kind of part of my strategy. This is Spider-Man #6. These are great Todd McFarlane story and art. Maybe could have included this in that Signature Series submission, although poor Uncle Todd, I think he's drowning in comics to sign. So we're all pulling for you to finish those signature submissions and get them out over the next month or so. But I regularly buy these cheap $1.50, $2.50, $3, and I'll buy as many as I can, as many as the seller has listed as near mint. and kind of go through them. Occasionally you'll get a newsstand thrown in there. And any of them that I kind of assess that look to be a 9.8, I like to set them aside or send them in for submissions because they have pretty good value. It's just kind of a bread and butter sort of situation that really speaks to value picking, where you're like, I'm going to spend $3 in the book raw. I'm going to get it graded. Maybe when it's all said and done, it's about a $30 investment, and you can then check the value on these and it be somewhere in the $60 to $75 range. So it's a really nice way to add value to your collection. Great nostalgic 90s Spider-Man by McFarlane. You just can't go wrong. All right, I've lost count of how many slabs. It's got to be close to 25 at this point. All right, this was another one that was kind of an interesting book to me. This is Warlock and the Infinity Watch #2. This is from 1992. We've got Jim Starlin on story here, where to me he's kind of the cosmic universe architect in a way. So many great Starlin stories, characters, creations that have really kind of shaped a big part of the Marvel universe as we know it today. The interesting thing about this one is it's a newsstand copy. I am not a newsstand hunter. CGC did not note newsstand on the top. I thought that they were doing that as far as indicating that it was a newsstand variant. But at any rate, it is the newsstand copy as evident from the barcode down here. And I bought this off of Atomic Avenue, and they don't distinguish between direct and newsstand. And I just happened to notice it after I placed an order. I was actually trying to get the direct copy because I thought that was a value pick, just for that book, being able to acquire it in near mint and having some value in a CGC 9.8. And then what I realized is the newsstand is quite rare for this book. So there's even more value in it. Again, I'm not a huge newsstand person, but I am a fan of value, and I'm also a fan of getting a rarer copy of something when that's not the one that you ordered. But that's not because I made a mistake or the seller made a mistake. It was just Warlock and the Infinity Watch #2 listed near mint, and I purchased. It did not have a direct or newsstand designation. And I remember on the video where I was asking for help as far as which books I should submit, I think folks said don't submit this one because it's not modern. And I almost wanted to challenge that to say, okay, do they have specific graders that are only looking for modern books? And when I say modern books, even though this is 92, I consider this like the extreme era, whereas modern, you know, somewhere around 2013 or 2015 going forward. More of like your brand new book is kind of when I hear modern nowadays, I think of that. So what the advice was, only send recently released comics in there in a pre-screen 9.8. I was like, let me just throw a couple in there that was a little bit older. Obviously the Spider-Man #6 from 91. This is from 92, and they made it through. So that's good news. In my first 9.8 pre-screen, the bulk of the books that were kicked out were not those new releases, and I think that's where some of the theorizing came from. All right, I've got 5 left to go here, and this book is also from the 90s. This is Wonder Woman 83 from 1994, another book that it was suggested to not include in the pre-screen, and wanted to include it. I also talked about this recently. Brian Bolland on Wonder Woman covers. Amazing, fantastic run. And this one, memorable, ? Not my favorite personal Wonder Woman cover. It has some collectability because of the chains, the weapon pointed at her, and so forth. I don't really like to collect these myself, but this specific book does have additional value built into it as compared to some of the other Brian Bolland Wonder Woman covers. So I did pick it up from Mile High Comics at a pretty decent price. Now, what I thought was cool about this one was I pressed this book. Kind of an odd book, but it's a 9.8, has a lot of value. I pressed it, so I'm happy with the outcome. Okay, next book is Batgirl 31. This is the Art Germ version, cover variant. And again, kind of what ends up happening is, yes, I love the value picks. Yes, I'm looking for adding as much value to my collection and having very collectible, desirable books. Sometimes you just see a book and you see a cover, you evaluate it, you kind of look at it and go, this is in very good condition, probably a 9.8 candidate, and you send it in and it doesn't matter. This is one of those cases. Really love this Batgirl cover. This is from 2019. and very easy to find. Probably can still get it in cover price. I didn't care. I loved it anyway and wanted to get it slabbed. I've got a few more to go here. Oh, this is another interesting one. This is Spawn 141. There is no note here on the label with regards to this being a she Spawn appearance. I believe this is her first full cover appearance. And as the Spawn series has continued to break records as an independent series created by Todd McFarlane, this is a Greg Capullo cover, and a very cool one at that. But as the series continued on and the issue numbers got higher and higher, there was a period of time where the issues became more scarce and hard to find. This is not in that specific run of Spawn. I think that occurs a little bit later in the series. But the She-Spawn character and how the Spawn universe is continuing to kind of evolve and grow is certainly interesting. And again, just fantastic cover art by Greg Capullo. This was kind of a value pick for me in terms of just finding older Spawn back issues that had value graded. And bought this from Mile High Comics and was shocked when I got it. I was like, there's nothing wrong with this. It was... purchased in near mint or mint and apostrophe mint, and I'm like, it's a 9.8, and wanted to make sure I got this in with this submission. So very, very happy with this one. Okay, the last two books are identical. They're both slabs, so they're both a 9.8, and I'm gonna just take them out of the bag and show you both of them at once. This, along with those Sozamaika Catwomen books, this was the book, I guess times two, that I was the most nervous about and most curious about in terms of getting the grade. And it is The Sandman Universe, Nightmare Country by Jenny Frison. And yep, there are two of them. When I first saw this cover, I guess I don't need to hold both of them. When I first saw this cover, I was absolutely blown away. I'm a Jenny Frison fan, but this might be my favorite cover. And I love a lot of her art, but I love the Sandman, love Sandman Universe, love the character of Death here on the cover. She doesn't have a ton of, like, not necessarily keys. Her first appearance is a key, but like really, really standout, memorable covers, maybe other than her first appearance. And this is just, it's astounding to me how good it is. I love it. I think it's just fantastic. The expression, the composition, just kind of even the way her fingers just kind of coming up over the skull. I just think it's amazing. And I do remember paying a lot for this because it is a 1 in 100. I was going to get it slabbed regardless of grade, but I wanted to run it through a pre-screen. And again, it was one of those where I was just concerned again with the cardstock issues that I mentioned before, with cardstock splitting around the corner just sort of naturally. And I was just thinking to myself, okay, certainly if it doesn't get through the pre-screen, it's a 9.6. Do I send it in with a standard submission just to get it slabbed because I want to display this book? I'm so pleased with this being part of the submission, and having these two copies come back in a 9.8. Wow, just really, really made it for me. So super, super happy with that. Now the last little bit is to go through the rejects and see how many of these books didn't make it. It's a very, very small number of books. Looks like it's about 3 books. All right, let's see which ones didn't make it. And, you know, of course you want all the books to come back in 9.8. And there's no grader notes on these. It's just, they were just rejected. Department of Truth #1. This is In-Hyuk Lee, 1 in 25. Always loved this Department of Truth cover for #1. I may just have to go ahead and grab this in a 9.8. I think the prices have come down. And like I've talked about before, people kind of ignore the incentive multiplier on these after a while, and it's just a variant cover. So it's probably worth my while just to grab that in a 9.8. I am seeing a little bit of creasing by the spine, a couple of small ticks here. So, you know, it was borderline 9.6, 9.8. Russell Dodderman variant for X-Men #1. This also is a 1 in 25. It's funny because they sent these back, you know, with my original bags and boards, and you could see I put 9.6 on these. Hopefully that didn't influence them by already having having them pre-graded by me. But I had a couple of copies of these with these Daughterman variants with the iterations of the character designs on them. I love these, and with Jean Grey Phoenix being one of my favorite X-Men, I wanted to take a chance at this one. I think at the time I did put 9.6. I'm looking at it now, a little bit of, an issue with the corner softening, a couple of spine ticks, again, just borderline 9.6, 9.8, and same goes for, here it is, that Something is Killing the Children #2 that I mentioned. Didn't make it through. I also graded it 9.6. I should probably stop grading the pre-screens and sending, or just putting 9.8 on the back. So anyway, they took a look at this one, and it didn't make it through. This is my only copy of Something is Killing the Children #2, so I'll have to also consider hunting this down in a 9.8 at this point to complete that run. So my success rate on this one, 22 out of 25, I'll take it. I don't mind the 3 rejects coming back. This was a very, very, very successful submission. Really pleased with the selection of books that I decided to pick out. And man, I can't wait to start displaying these 9.8s in here and showing them off in future videos. I love it. Love the hobby. I'm super happy. Just so many great books. I keep staring at this one. Could be the cover of the year for me for 2022. I know there's a couple of other great ones out there that's in competition for that, but just an absolutely stunning book. And just so fortunate to have that one back and a 9.8, and it's going straight up on the wall for display. I appreciate you hanging out and watching this entire submission start to finish. This for me was a highly anticipated pre-screen, so I'm really happy with the return here. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.